I'm perfectly feeling at home. We're starting at Indian Standard Time, 20 minutes late. So those guys who have not figured out, I'm from India. I'm in the United States for the last many, many years. And before we begin, I want to give you a little story about how to remember my name. I see it and hear it getting killed and chopped and minced and sliced and diced in many, 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 many ways. And that's okay. What's in a name at the end of the day, right? Looking at the demographics here, I think probably may be able to associate with this story. Several years ago, when I was working with another American company, CEO of that company then introduced me to the whole work pool of the company. And he said, I know you're going to have difficulty remembering his name, so I'm going to give you a story. So it's his story, by the way. I'm just reciting it here. It seems in 1960s and 70s, there used to be a famous American singer called Neil Sudhakar. There you go. And he wrote Sudhakar, S-E-D-A-K-E-R, not R, K-E. And then he added R and he said, this is Sudhakar. Well, 3 years down the line, I started still receiving physical mail called Neil Lahade. That tells the story. So I'm Sudhakar Lahade, researcher by profession, and we at Steelcase did this research 3 years ago on Generation Y. And you will wonder, why? So Generation Y, and there are many, many definitions about Generation Y, and I'm not going to give you a whole philosophical course of what Generation Y, when the generation begins, and when do we call it a generation versus a group of people. For our understanding, we said 20 years is a span of life for Generation Yers, which can define a cohort based on behaviors and traits, born between 1980 and 2000. Again, there are many definitions of the Generation Y, but what we call Generation Y, for our research purposes, is 20-year span. Interestingly, if you go onto Generation Y and Google and write Gen Y, you'll get about 28 million results about Generation Y. Instead of Gen Y, if you write Generation Y, and this is as of this morning, some of you may not see the slides here because they are pretty bright and things are faded out here. If instead of Gen Y, if you type Generation Y in Google, you'll find 35 million of resources. Put together, 55 million resources. If you go to Amazon, you'll find 5,175 books on the topic of generation or Generation Y. My question then, why any more research? Right? What is that you want to know? I mean, go read this. Probably need many generations to finish reading what has been already written in the tin wash. The reason why we wanted to study Generation Y is because most of the resources which are available on the net, including the books, and we read about 28 books after finding out which ones are the most important books amongst all 5,000 books at that time. That time I think there were only 185 books for some reason. This information really focuses on a very surface level understanding, which is the characteristics of Generation Y. There are multitaskers, tech savvy, and so on and so on and so on and on and on and on. So if I tell you a characteristic of an Indian, 5 feet 6 inch tall, dark skin, little accent, little heavier accent, and probably speaks fast. And he says yes or no, we can't figure out from his head shake or handshake either. So if I give the characteristics understanding of an Indian, that characteristics doesn't help you any more than just entertain you for a few minutes, maybe a few hours. And that's precisely the point. We really wanted to understand what inspires and motivates Generation Y. We really wanted to understand how they think and work, and the implications of that to the work itself, and most importantly, the design of workplace that accommodate them. That's the key. A lot of time we hear this, and when we interact and give presentations to large multinational companies, one of the biggest points they have, the biggest issue with new generation is, how do I attract and retain Gen Y? Right? Most of you face this question too, all of us. The question is that if you don't know who they are, I mean, very interestingly, when they talk about attracting and retaining, what comes to my mind is the mousetrap. Attract and retain. Right? Forever, maybe. And what you don't want to do with people, especially workforce, is you don't want to attract them, and you don't want to retain them. You want to get them and engage with them. But if you don't know what attracts and what retains, forget about attracting and retaining, right? So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do research on Generation Y. So one of the biggest important question for us was, what's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years when baby boomers, so-called baby boomers, want to be fading out of typical workplace in the United States, right? So they're going to be obviously replaced by next generation, which is Generation Xer, and most importantly, Generation Yer. Generation Xer is kind of limited by its own size, 50 million people. Don't include me, because that statistic does not include people like me, for some reason, right? Well, then the question comes, it's not only the butts which needs the chair to sit in. It needs the space for minds to really collaborate and understand how to work, how to think about work, and so on and so forth. So that was very important for us. Now, if you talk about generation, any generation for that matter, it's not because you're born in that time, that's why it's called generation. What matters or what makes you a specific generation compared to the other people, other group of people, is about what was governing them. What was really happening in terms of influences about economy. What was really happening in terms of technology, what we were using. And I think, Kevin, you did a fantastic job about clarifying what is technology and what can be called as technology. Not necessarily typical definition of technology means technology tools. Anything and everything we work with is technology. That was a great understanding. Thanks for that. And then obviously, what are the memories that you share? What culture do you live in? That brings it, the kind of common shared experiences that defines who I am or who you are as it relates to generation. We're not talking about cultural differences here, we're talking about generational differences. So in order to understand that deeper, what we did was we did an assignment with lots of people. We call it timeline activity. What we did is we called a group of people from all generations and into a room, and we said, okay, we're going to give you different post-it notes based on who you are, generation. If you're born before 1980 or if you're born after 1980, you're going to pick up a different color post-it note. What we're going to ask you is, go into your minds and tell us what really impacted in your life. What kind of events come to your mind that made an impression on you? Write down the event, such as 9/11, which is on a pink post-it note, which is talking about one particular generation. When did that happen? 2001. When were you born? 1979. And then on the wall, what we asked them to do is that we created 4 horizontal divisions. One was about culture, politics, economy, and technology. And we said, you pick up that post-it note and put wherever you think that belongs on the timeline, starting from 1928 all the way to 2008 at that time. So people put up this particular post-it note went sometimes in politics, sometimes in economy, and that was all fine. We really wanted to understand how that impacted them, because that impacts their thinking and behavior, and that was very important for us. So when you look at their timelines, what comes very strongly is there are many, many events which everybody on every generation put it together. But then there are a couple of events which became as a pattern, more significant than others. So for baby boomers, these became very important. For Generation Yers, those are the important events. And again, the colored ones are more prominent than the other ones. So they were like many participants, but most of them said, these are the events which identifies who they are. Right? So what? So what? Right? So then when we looked at it and we tried to synthesize, we tried to identify what are the similarities and differences. What came up very strongly, there are a lot of similarities, but there are key differences. The events which matter to Gen Yers are primarily 2 ways different than matter to what other events which matter to other generations. Number one, they are technology related. So if you go back to the previous one, right, there is a technology component here too, but not as strong as what you see in the Generation Yers. Right? The number one difference was the technology was key driver for Gen Yers, as Maria said very beautifully, that they can't live without technology, they can't think without technology. Other important thing is that the events which matter to Gen Yers primarily had global impact, had global relationship, JFK assassination, yes, it is a global event for most of Americans, right? It didn't matter for example, people in China at that time, what happened to JFK. It probably didn't matter to most of the Indians at that time, and so on and so forth. So that's a very big differentiation, and that's very, very important, key differentiator, how we think what the world is, from what perspective we look at the world. So obviously, I'm not going to go through a couple of slides here, I'm going to really run through. They are socially minded, they are diverse, they are tech savvy, they are real-time connected, they are creative, they are collaborative, and so on, and so on, and so on. Characteristics are important, but not really valuable. What's important is the behaviors. What I look like, how I speak, whether my head shakes 360 degrees or 80 degrees, 180 times, doesn't really matter. How I think and what I do matters to you, or should matter to you, right? Similarly, the behaviors are more prominent, more valuable, more impactful than the characteristics. So some of the behaviors are very important. Tech-savvy, real-time, connected, and multitasking, what does that mean? What it means is that technology is an oxygen. As Maria said, they can't live without it. Success through social networking is the behavior, which is different than any previous behavior of generations. When you say that they are overprotected and entitled, what does that mean? The leaders who want to make an impact on the day one. I want to jump in the workplace and I want to be a director of an organization. So I'm going to give you here a great story here. Several years ago, I was at a company in Atlanta area, and I was in the process of hiring a new design graduate from Georgia Institute of Technology. Pretty renowned school. So this guy comes, so we had 17 applications at that time, and we zeroed down on 2, which we thought are great candidates. Great portfolio, great resume, and great vision statements. Anyway, so we're deciding which one to go with. So this guy who I interviewed, third interview, and in his application, he had written his salary expectation anywhere between $60,000 to $300,000 per year. Well, at that point, I didn't have a short-sighted lens or long-sighted lens, but I just knew that I'm reading something wrong here. So obviously, I opened up that question to him and said, everything is great, so I want to understand, is this an error on your application or not? And he said, no. And he was extremely confident, 22-year-old industrial designer, fabulous background. So I said, okay, let's have conversation. So why not $75,000? So why not $250,000? Why between $60,000 and $300,000? What he told me is really blew me completely. I wouldn't have expected that answer from him. What he said is that the CEO of the company touches 12,000 people's lives. We had 12,000 employees at that time. And makes $3.2 million, including bonuses. In next 1 year to 3 years, which is what I had here mentioned, $60,000 to $300,000. In next 1 year to 3 years, I expect to touch at least 180 to 200 people's lives. And if you do the math, I'm not expecting too much. Well, I was shocked. Not because of what he said, but because he had done his homework. He was extremely confident. He had a point of view, and he did not mind sharing that point of view absolutely confidently. He defended it. Whether we hired him or not, that's a completely different story. Right, going forward. So this is what the behaviors are. Now what do you do with that? We're not going to judgment, we're not going to say good or bad or right or wrong. When I was, stop that. We're not talking about when you were 22 years, because that time is gone. Anyway, so when you're talking about empower risk takers and entrepreneurial, it is about career building, not job hopping. So if I have a mindset, and if I'm a Gen Y, if I were a Gen Y, and if my mindset is that when I want to grow, I need to job hop because that's the only way to grow, and then you, the baby boomers, think that that's not being loyal. Oh, no, I'm not talking about being loyal. I'm talking about career building. For career building, I need to have multiple job opportunities and grow. Oh, no, you're not being loyal. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about what lens, what kind of lens that you're looking at things from. And that's very important. Lifelong learners, work-life balance, where the life comes first. Whereas for previous generations, work was life. A year and a half ago, NPR, National Public Radio, ran a show for a 18-minute segment in which they're talking about interviewing 18 people at destinations which are typically called vacationing destinations. And this was done in the United States, so this is very important. What they did was they asked the same question to all these 18 people. Out of 18 people, I think there were 10 baby boomers, 4 Gen Ys, and 4 Gen Xers. And they asked the same question. Tell us about you. And these were like mountain tops and beaches and places like people go there, probably half naked most of the time, to enjoy and relax. 10 out of 10 baby boomers, or 12 out of 18 people interviewed, said something like this. I am vice president of so-and-so company and do this and do that. Xers, I'm the engineer and I love engineering and I work with this company and before that, so on and so forth. 4 out of 4 Gen Ys said, I love being on the beach and this is the most fascinating time I have. Long story short, previous generation could not identify themselves without the job title and the big office and the name on the outside of the big office with the fantastic furniture in the office space. Right? That's what very important for them. They lived for working. Right? We're not saying right or wrong, but that's what it was. So obviously, how different are they from the other generations was the key for our understanding. So first of all, we want to understand Generation Y about the US and then compare contrast to really get a little bit of understanding. Because it would be stupid to understand India, China, and USA in 30 minutes. So I'm not going to promise you that, but we might be able to touch and compare contrast and kind of generate our curiosity to go beyond. So when you leave this place, you will start finding out what's the difference between a Gen Y in India and Gen Y in China and Gen Y in the US. So let's do that. So when we compare baby boomers to Xers to Yers, especially in the United States, as it relates to work ethics, work hard, be thankful was the ethics for baby boomers most of the time. Work hard, be skeptical. Even after working hard, I might still get fired, not because I'm bad, because the company is not doing good. And I got to be prepared for that, right? Whereas, work right, do what I love, who cares for the job anyways? I have LinkedIn, I'm connected to 355 people, and I have already sent my resume online, offline, everywhere. And my friends know that I may need a job any moment. Right? So when you're talking about career goals, building a stellar career, one rung at a time called beautiful corporate ladder that reach to somewhere top which I don't see right now, will never see ever. But I believe because I'm so loyal to the company and the organization and the profession, for whatever reasons. Things have changed, professions have changed. There used to be something called 800 professions just 10 years ago. Today we have 2,700 different professions. It's very difficult even to apply on job hunting sites because they ask you, so what's your profession? I don't know. I joined as something else, but now I'm somebody else, and whatever I do doesn't fit into any of the job titles that you're asking for. I don't know what I want. So, building portable careers on the wheels. I may go to the office and I know what, who knows, there's a brown box waiting for me with a pink slip inside that. That's what Gen Xers. Whereas Gen Yers, I want to build a parallel career. I was in India not too long ago, a few months ago, and I met this guy, so we were talking Generation Y research, and we were doing cultural research this time. So I ended up talking to lots of people, and they came across this 26-year-old young guy. And so we're having conversation, what do you do? And he said, I've done my MBA, and now I'm doing blogging. I said, blogging? That kind of a profession? I know it's a good profession, but I had to appear like a corporate citizen, right? Blogging? What is that about? Tell me. What he told me, like he makes about 320 to 350,000 US dollars sitting in India, Hyderabad, where the year's expense cannot be, for the luxurious lifestyle, cannot be more than $60,000 US dollars. Who pays him? Google. For what? Blogging. What's he blogs about? Whatever he likes. It doesn't matter. Now he blogs about technology and what is the right technology and wrong technology. The point here is that he is not talking about one career. He blogs about health. He blogs about... So anyway, so I asked him a small question. I said, well, can you tell me how many blogs do you have? And he said 47 or so. And I said, okay, so you make this $320,000 a year or so. Which blog makes you most of the money? Can you give me a little bit of statistics? And he was absolutely open. That's another thing of the characteristic of Gen Y. They will tell you what underwear size they wear. Not only that, they'll be very happy to tell you, what, you want to see the color? Yeah, no, stop. And if you don't have time, go see it on Facebook. It's up there. Right? Well, so he clearly told me that the blog, that's technology blog, that he manages well, because he has 20 other people he has hired to write and to blog about. On a daily basis, he manages that, and that makes him 80% of his money. Remaining 20%, which is, I think, salary in a prosperous country called the United States for some of the people, right? $60,000. Not bad. Remaining money he manages by creating floating blogs, and I never heard about this definition called floating blogs. And I said, tell me more about floating blogs. And what he tells me is that you create a blog, write 15 to 20 pages, real good, valuable information. And I said, how do you do that? It's pretty simple. He said, what? Go to the website, find out all other blogs, take few key valuable blogs, and just mash it up and create your blog. And then those 15 pages takes probably a day or two to create and float the blog. That's it. Every day to begin with, you'll get about $1.20 per day. Over the period of next 6 months, you'll start getting about $500 a day, depending on how well it's written. I said, amazing. Anyway, so enough on that. So that's the mindset of people. Now, when you talk about work, worker, and work environment, what we really found out is baby boomers really talking about achievement-oriented work. It's about work, it's about life, and for them, having spacious, private, comfortable environment is the key. Culture, they really care about relaxed and casual culture. That's what matters to them. You go other extreme, you'll find that meaningful and impactful work is the most important thing for Gen Yers. And shift in loyalty. Life comes first, then comes friends, then comes family, then comes community, then comes environment, and then comes your employer. Fifth. What they really care for is a diverse, open, and transparent culture. And the reason why they care for transparent culture is that that's how they think they can grow. Once that they know what the company stands for, who's doing what kind of work, what are the kinds of projects available, and who are the key players. Once I know that, rest is the easy game. And that's what was hidden before. This was considered as, it's not the information to be shared, none of your business, right? So we went to different organizations to really see what's really happening, how are Gen Yers working in the environment, and how are they interacting, and what is really happening. They're constantly networking with their peers, both inside and outside. Peers is a very important word for them. As I said, loyalty towards life, friends, families, environment, communities, environment, and then the organization. We also saw that the informal peer-to-peer interactions often results in quick, impromptu, collaborative sessions. The biggest holy grail that everybody in the corporate America is worried about is that how do we get people to collaborate? Look at that. That's how. How do you do that? You don't do. Just step away. They'll do it. Right? That's amazing. It's very amazing. Working any place, any time. So this is at, I think, about 1:30 in the middle of the night in a place which is neither Grand nor Rapids, called Grand Rapids. A lot of people in this case may not like me for that. And this is a coffee place. This is a coffee place. So you will say, oh, so what? If you dig deeper, you'll understand, so what? So you would wonder that people go there and just do email chatting and stuff like that. I interviewed all these people who are sitting there. There are 9 people sitting, and there are many others who are standing in the line for either coffee or whatever. And there's a huge music. And think about ergonomic chair. Well, this is not an ergonomic chair. This is a wooden chair. This is about perfect lighting for the work effectiveness. I don't see none here. I said, okay, give me concentration, focus for my focused work. Well, there's a huge music. And hustle and bustle, and people are really moving around. And I can smell cigarettes, even if I don't want to. Right? In that environment, this guy is an artist who's doing artistry work. A person right behind him is preparing for GMAT. Well, whatever little I know about GMAT, I know it requires intense focus. Right? The person over there is preparing for his final paper due for his MBA. There are two people on this side who are playing a game of chess, and they're laughing and giggling, and nobody's even saying, shut up. That's what happens. 1:30 at night in a place called Grand Rapids, Michigan. Discovering new workarounds and focus for ergonomics. One of the giant technology company on the West Coast. This is happening in that company, one of the lead software code writer. Well, he's not waiting for his boss to approve his budget for stuff. He's just making things which is appropriate for him to work and get the work done, because their focus is not on being comfortable, spacious environment with a big title and a card which has vice president of nothing. Right? They want the transparency. We talked about that. Transparency about everything. They want to know what the company stands for, who's related to what projects are happening, what's the process, who is doing what kind of stuff, so that I can connect and align myself. So blame game is over. I'm not going to blame my boss, my company, or for anybody else. I'm going to take the responsibility on myself. You, the company, provide me the opportunity to see the things so that I can maneuver my own movement within the company or outside, for that matter. Obviously, environment, they know that baby boomers and probably to some extent Gen Xers have screwed up the country and the world and the environment. And they think it's their responsibility to do that, to take care of that. The gravitating to the casual and informal places is the key. One story I must say, this is again another giant company on the south coast now, on the west side. I'm sorry, the west coast to the south side of California. And this is a very casual environment. What intrigued me was there was a whiteboard in the play area. And I said, whiteboard in the play area? Tell me more about that. So I ended up talking to the facility planner, and he said, you don't know what happens here. I said, please tell me what happens here. And he said, people come here for playing, and then they get into a conversation, and most often they start writing the code because they can't solve it themselves. But they get people from different departments, when they get along, they kind of pose this question to each other, and that's how they write the code. So the problem is that I'll not share the code with you guys. I took this photograph, and I thought that's fascinating, how to allow people to collaborate and solve hard problems. Some of the slides I'm going to run really quickly because we're running short of time here. What we understood is there are 8 key shifts which are happening with Generation Y. The 8 shifts are talking about the ways of the past to the ways of now. The first shift is, I am larger than work. I am bigger than work. Work is just one component of me. That's very important. And the reason why I created this slide so that you can remember it easier rather than just listening to this and forgetting after some time. Work is just one component. Career lattice is taking the place of career, something called corporate ladder. And then meaningful and impactful work is important then. The second shift is workplace is where I am. So there's no more a place called a place to go there and sit there for 8 hours. That ergonomics definition has already changed, where nobody sits on any chair for more than a few hours. Except for conferences, of course. And good thing is that you're sitting in most ergonomic chair, hopefully. Obviously, technology is no more a tool. Mary said that very beautifully. It's an extension of themselves. So they can't live without it. So obviously, they 24 hours, they're connected, they're tethered. And then, obviously, because they are working with technology 24 hours, the trust can be developed online and offline. And so these are the 4 mega trends, if you would, that has implications to the workplace design. What it means is that it's no more about conformity, it's about individual identity. And identity, when I am larger than the work, is not about your title, it's not about your profession, it's not about what you do, it's about who you are. It's not about training anymore. It's not about companies telling that you get in the company and we will train you. Yeah, that's important so that I can get my skills developed, but I need the growth. And the way that happens is mentoring and transparency. It's not about work anymore. You've fantastically, beautifully given me a technology, something called laptop, and then you've given me a BlackBerry which comes all the way to my potty seat. The work has come from your office all the way to my bedroom, to toilets, many a times. So allow the work to happen, allow the life to happen at work. And that just doesn't mean one treadmill in a corner which nobody goes and even walks even a 0.1 mile on that because my boss doesn't like it. But allowing the flexibility of time and tools so that I can get the work done anyhow, anyway. And it's no more about collaboration, it's about connection. How do you support the connection so the collaboration becomes outfall? So what? Then we said, okay, so if it is so important in the United States because Generation Y is 70 million in the United States. Can you imagine the Generation Y, size of Generation Y in India and China for that matter? How many Gen Ys do you think are in India? Oh, you said that. 426 million Gen Ys in India. Agreed, all of them are not living in urban areas. 141 million in urban areas, exactly double the size of the United States. And then 218, 10 years cohort called post-80s in China alone. So I'm going to tell you another story and a couple of slides and then we'll wind it up. So why is it important to understand Generation Y in any other country for that matter? If we knew your own generations, if this is the country, a land of opportunity, land of technology and future and growth and everything is here, why are you even worried about understanding Gen Y in any other country? One word. Competition. That's our customer base. Because the numbers I look at, I think United States, what I find fascinating is people get out by when I show the numbers. In India, people don't get out by seeing many people, also millions of people on the street and nobody gets out. That's common, that's normal. Anyway, the story goes like this. Several hundred years ago, Alexander the Great, on a mission to conquer the world, came all the way to a place called Indus Valley, which is the east and west civilization meets together. And then he saw, with his army in the back and everybody in rush, he saw an old naked monk sitting on a rock, peacefully meditating. And Alexander the Great talks to himself and says, what a waste of life. He's about to turn around and go, because he didn't want to waste his time. The monk opens his eyes and asks him a question. Friend, looks like you're in a great rush. What's the hurry? Where are you up to? And Alexander the Great says, I'm on a mission to conquer the world. And then he's about to turn, but that curiosity kind of peeks back in his mind and he says, can I ask you a question? The monk just smiles. Thus granted permission. Alexander the Great goes and asks a question. Can you tell me what are you sitting here and doing? And his mind completes the statement, nothing. The monk peacefully smiles and says, I'm on a mission to conquer myself. Who's right and who's wrong? Both are there right in their own places, right? So it's very important to understand how world sees the world before we start understanding what the business means to the world, or the part of the world for that matter. So when you compare the characteristics, there are a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, but that's not important. We said characteristics is not that important as much as the behaviors. So then we understood there are so we talked about Gen Y behaviors in USA. So Gen Y behaviors in India, they're open for new ideas and new possibilities, very optimistic about their future. Even though some of them, most of them in India still live on $2 a day, right? The desire and drive for entrepreneurship is too extreme and high, and deep interest in owning the state-of-the-art technologies. That's what Gen Y in India is all about. In China, it's about confidence. They're very confident about whatever they do, or whatever they ask to do. They follow the brands and trends very closely, and most importantly, opportunities to learn. They count themselves explorer. So some of the photographs so that you get a feel. So work is happening 24/7. It's happening slightly differently in other parts of the world. Social interactions are very important. But what matters to the social interactions? The drivers are slightly different. Learning and growth are pursued as a means of further one's career. That's the same drive for individuals, but how it is achieved is very different. What you see here and what you see here, the big difference is here, the person who is just newly hired is getting trained and working at the same time. Whereas what is happening here in the United States is the person gets time to get trained. What's happening over here is we've got to sit together, divide the work, and conquer the work, rather than trying to understand each other's work. They are eager to express their identity. Resist the permanent career and planned chip. That's the expression in US. What I see on the screen is, on the work area is the idols of lots of gods who are blessing them. But then they have a Superman on the computer as a screensaver. And the computer is probably 10 to 12 years old. Right? Whereas here, the latest trends, and I want to be part of that trend, is the big drive in China. Gravitating to third places, we saw a couple of examples about what happens at the cafe. What happens in the cafe in India is building relationship. The social relationship is the most important in India. China is all about exploring. Third places are to understand and to connect and to find out what did you find differently. And that's very different from each other. Socialization. I'm socializing with technology, the key driver. I'm socializing, people are the key driver. I'm socializing, the growth is the key driver. We will give you a perfectly ergonomic workplace and we care for your well-being. When you are traveling anywhere between 45 minutes to 3 hours one way in that situation. So what is that fantastic, beautiful, ergonomic chair going to do in my life? Right? Transparency is very important, but how it is played out is very different. Again, we don't have enough time to really go into each of those issues. But those issues are the key issues which makes an individual different than the other people. So we talked about the key 8 shifts for USA. So let's talk about a few important shifts for India that differentiates who they are. They are moving from service to core competency. It's no more the call center in India. It's no more, I am John from India, how can I help you? No, I am Sudhakar from India, how can I help you? That's the difference. It's from local to global. It's no more about working for an Indian company only, it's working from Nokia. Nokia had the largest customer base anywhere in the world in India. I'm standing here in Nokia headquarters and talking about it. And workplace as an expense was a shift before, now it's about workplace as an investment, and that's the key driver there. So Accenture did a lot of research around Gen Y in India, and one of the findings which correlates to our finding is that Gen Y in India are more technologically savvy. They want to own latest and greatest technologies more stronger than any Gen Y in the United States as well. What is the drive? The reason why that drive is so strong in India is because technology is a leveler for people coming from different social, economic, religious, and any other background. iPhone behaves and treats you equally, regardless what caste system you come from, whether you're Hindu or Muslim, or whether you make $1 million a year, or you just make $250 a year. And that's the leveler, and that's why technology is a great tool. Similarly, as far as China is concerned, it's about exploring. Gen Y and the technology helps them in exploring, understanding what the world is, becoming aware, and become the part of global citizenship. So I'm going to show you some of the examples here in terms of what space can do. So what it means to the office design or workplace design. So when you talk about identity in US, and this is blue color in the US, just in case we haven't figured it out thus far, or for that matter. So identity, as it relates to individual identity for Gen Yers, it is about the space. It's about my individual space and my technology and my expression that I can share with others. That's the key driver there. It's not about having a space only. It's allowing the space to do certain things, explaining, exploring, and connecting me to others. And also there's a personal life expression here. So allowing my backpack, my bike, or my rollerblade to come into the office. When it comes to growth, it's about mentoring and allowing connection to the people and information. That's the key for Gen Y in the US. When it comes to Gen Yers in India, it's about social connections, allowing families to come to the work and allowing intervention where I can have celebrations or social celebrations at work, even if it means on the weekends. When it comes to collaboration in China, this is for particularly China, in China the collaboration is understood very differently. Collaboration is not about people coming together and expressing ideas and taking the thought level to the higher level. It's about what is the work? We are 10 of us. Divide the work into 10 pieces and we'll get it done. We call it teamwork here in the United States, right? But what they want also is they want a social setting so that I have my personal work, but I can turn around and get into a social setting so that my social connection is not lost. So that's at a very high level. The question is, where do we go from here? How can we, of course, not attract and retain, but attract and engage the best talent? The next question is, are we leveraging the new and emerging behaviors? First question, are we even understanding what are the new and emerging behaviors? And then, how are we supporting Gen Yers and allowing them to cross-collaborate across the global platform? That's the key. And I'll stop here, and I know that you told me 3 times and I conveniently ignored him. But that's the only way I could finish. So thank you very much. Thanks for being useful.